Welcome to Take Action Against Fraud, 5 Things You Can Do Today, brought to you by the Controllers Council. My name is Neil Brown, Executive Director of the Controllers Council. Before I introduce our expert speaker, I want to mention some brief housekeeping items and share a word about our sponsor. In regard to housekeeping, first we'll have a Q&A at the end of the presentation, so please use, if time allows, so please use your GoToWebinar control panel to ask our expert questions. We'll get to as many as possible and can also answer questions post-webcast. Next, we'll have 5 polling questions. So again, please use your GoToWebinar control panel to vote, view, and benchmark your peers on these polls. And then finally, you'll receive a link to this webcast via email in the next 24 hours. So no need for notes or screenshots. So with that, I'd like to introduce our sponsor, Bill.com, a leading provider of cloud-based software that simplifies, digitizes, and automates complex back-office financial operations for small and mid-sized business. Customers use Bill.com platform to manage end-to-end financial workflows and to process payments. Headquartered in San Jose, Bill.com processes more than $100 billion annually in payments. Learn more at Bill.com. With that, I'm pleased to introduce our expert speaker, Laura Redmond, founder and CEO of Redmond Accounting, a Bay Area accounting firm that is the accounting department for tech companies. Laura, welcome.
Thank you, Neil. Hello, everyone. I'm so glad to be with you today. Today, we're going to talk about fraud. And I want to start by introducing myself, just so you know a little bit about my experience, where I'm coming from. I run, as Neil said, an accounting firm called Redmond Accounting. We're based outside of San Francisco in Silicon Valley, and we have staff in several states. We all work remotely using web-based accounting apps. And we've been doing that for about a decade. In 2011, we moved all of our clients onto web-based apps, including Bill.com. So we've been using Bill.com for over a decade. And I don't work for Bill.com. I'm just a longtime user and I love it. And throughout our topic today, you'll hear me share some of the features that Bill.com has that are excellent for fraud prevention. So our specialty as a firm is paperless, web-based accounting environments. Our firm does not do tax. We do have CPAs on staff, but we do not offer that as a service. We don't do any audit. All we do is act as the accounting department for our clients. And so our clients are businesses that either don't want to hire or know how to hire an accounting department, and they outsource it to us. And then we also work with a lot of clients who do have their own in-house accounting department, and they just want help moving to the cloud or going paperless and using some of the cloud-based apps that we've used for a long time. So we can get them all set up. So that's a lot of the work we do. Lots of things related to invoicing customers, paying bills, paying vendors, expense reports and payroll for staff, and of course doing all the bookkeeping and month-end close. We also are very big on our workflow, and we built a system over a decade ago to help us manage all of the procedures and processes that we do in our firm for multiple different companies. And so that allows us to organize each service we're supposed to do for each company and how to do it, and delegate that to all of our various staff at the right interval. And that allows us to have separation of duties, and it allows us to be really consistent with the work we do. So just throwing that out there because that's going to come up with some of the things we're going to talk about today. So now you know my experience and running accounting departments. So let's get started talking about fraud. I'm going to start off by just telling you 3 stories. Let's call this story time so that we can talk about some common things that happen and learn to identify them. I am not here to scare anyone. but I just want to talk about some stories that I've seen, and I'm not a fraud examiner. Our firm are not certified fraud examiners. This is our 17th year in business as an accounting firm, acting as the accounting department. And these are just things we see because they happen. Unfortunately, they happen. So I'm sharing them because I think that many of you are going to say, oh, I've heard of that, or I've seen that myself, or that happened to a colleague of mine. And I just want to talk about them so that we can all protect ourselves from them. So just in the normal course of business, I'll start with the first one. One day, we got a call from a growing company. This wasn't a client of ours. This was a new prospect. They had heard about us. They called us. They're located out here in Silicon Valley. They had over 50 employees at the time. They're up over 200 now. They had been referred to us and they needed us urgently. Like they were like, come out here now and help us. So their employee bookkeeper had just quit. This is the story that they had. Their employee bookkeeper had just quit, and one of the bookkeeper's duties had been to prepare the weekly check run to pay their vendors bill payments. The company had some controls in place. They kept their blank check stock locked away in a drawer, and a manager, not the bookkeeper, a different person, held the key to that drawer. So every week when the bookkeeper went to run the check run, she would show the manager the list of bills that needed to be paid, and the manager would give her the exact number of blank checks she needed to print that week's bill payments. Not because they didn't trust her, that was just their control in place. And then the bookkeeper would print the checks and give them to the manager to approve, and then for the CEO to sign. And there had been some printer issues. The printer had been acting up several times over the past few weeks and causing paper jams, so they'd have to get new checks out. And so when the bookkeeper quit, the company had to jump right in and take over duties to keep their vendors paid, right? So they get the first bank statement, and as they're reviewing it and they're getting copies of the cleared checks, they discovered that the bookkeeper had been printing checks made payable to herself. That's what the extra checks were needed. There hadn't actually been printer jams, but she was writing them to herself and forging the principal's signature. So those extra checks she had requested for the paper jams went to her and to her bank account. And the company had a lot of financial activity. There was a ton of activity, a lot of transactions, and that can make it really hard to find everything. This easily could have gone undetected. Those checks in just a few weeks added up to $17,973. So story number one is beware of employee fraud. We all generally trust and like each other at work, but this does happen, so we do need to prepare ourselves for it. We've seen this actually a number of times. It's not uncommon. Here's a fun little fact we learned, not fun, but just an interesting fact we learned during this. If this ever happens to you and you do catch it, apart from any legal or criminal actions you take to pursue the person, you can also file a 1099 in that person's name to the IRS, so that at least the IRS will,